Ah, here we are, the final monster.
Wait, sorry, what? The final one?
Yeah, like the end boss, I suppose.
I thought this was a second-tier monster.
No, it's definitely not that.
I see. Well, I left the oven on, and I think my cat's on fire. Goodbye.
Sorry, what was that? You said you were bringing back up? Sounds good. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, welcome back to the next wonderful thought experiment. Everyone's favorite amalgamation of opinions. This week's fantastical great debate among the Monster Hunter community. This time around, we are talking about the real lasting impressions. Not just monsters that leave lasting impressions, but the ones who are built to. The ones that are placed in advantageous positions to be remembered by being the final fight of quest lines in each of their individual games, including the final fight of both the offline and online modes in the old-style games. So while this list is still reasonably large, including all these things, it is also very specific. Today, my delightful little dahlias, it is time for a dissection of the official community-generated list of the top 5 best final bosses in Monster Hunter. It's a little on the crazy side, and today it's a little bit funkier than normal, but it's a great time, and I'm glad to have you guys along with me for the ride. If, by the way, you want to ride even more so, and thus take part in the voting for next week's list, the official top 5 most powerful monsters in Monster Hunter, just give a nice little scroll down to the description of this very video, where a link has been hand-placed by one of our assistants on your screen, gently released into your view. If you do vote, make sure that you stop in this comment section and tell us why you voted the way that you did, and you may even see your comment show up in the video itself. For those who don't know, usually I have absolutely no input on these lists. I even let you guys fill out the options to vote for themselves, staying completely out of the way. But today, for pretty obvious reasons, the voting options were set in stone by what Capcom hath given us in the past.
'Tis demanded by the gods, it is!
Which makes it a bit less comedy-driven, of course, less opportunities for you all to add your silly answers as you sometimes do, but it does make this list just all that more fair, and all that more applicable to real life, as everyone's choices are simply divided by the only options available. Getting into the core of the experience then, we'll be going over the list itself of the top 5 best final bosses as voted by you, followed by a little graph-based analysis of the experiment as a whole. So without further ado, let's begin with
number 5, with 8.41% of the votes.
Wait a minute. He kinda looks like a baby. Come here, I'm gonna eat ya!
Xenojiiva.
It has to be Xeno for me. The first time I ever fought him was probably my favorite hunt I've ever done. You can see his age in the way he behaves, and he was also my first final boss. The monster that taught me exactly how powerful and dangerous monsters really.
Really? What? How powerful and dangerous monsters really? What? Seriously though, this was pretty expected for a couple of reasons. The first, Xeno is probably one of the best led up to story monsters in the Monster Hunter history. Story as a whole has only been a real part of the Monster Hunter series for the last couple of generations, but the mystery of Xenojiiva is basically the plot point for the entirety of the base of Monster Hunter World. Then on top of that, the entire spectacle that his fight actually was. And of course, yeah, the fact that he starts fighting like he just entered this form, like he has no idea how to control any of his own power, and he just struggles and makes things harder for himself while still creating an extremely dangerous environment for the rest of us to survive in.
I picked Xenojiiva because 1, I've only ever gotten to the end of this Monster Hunter game, and 2, Xeno is very unique as he is made from pure Elder Dragon.
And this is the other main reason. No matter how you look at it, the majority of the people who have played Monster Hunter just at all started with Monster Hunter World. It just had that kind of reach that increased the community exponentially from what it was before. There's just that many more people who play the games now, myself included. I'm a Fifth Fleet newbie, no shame in it, and I do feel like people have a tendency to be a bit more biased towards the first final boss of their first Monster Hunter game when it comes to this. Though Xeno absolutely deserves their spot here regardless, so I'm totally happy to have him here.
Number 4, with 9.66% of the votes.
Raggy? Raggy?
Gogmazios.
Gogmazios. So many players were thrown for a loop when the hunt footage we got of just its chin was not even a tiny fraction of its full design. The lead up may not have had a story mode, but the hints from the Guildmaster the hints at its power being even more likely to throw you off. By text alone you expect a elder that may be invisible or as fast and it eats gunpowder, but they throw another loop bringing up that a Dragonator disappeared last time this thing ate their stuff.
Where's my Dragonator?
And then you go into the battle quarters. It's not anything you expected. Gog is huge and overpowering. You feel the need for the arena's help, and then it flies as the music changes into a fast dread of violins. Bonus points for unique mechanic in its oil beam exploding and its armor weapon design.
And this is where we get into a little bit of uncharted territory for me in multiple aspects, really. So I sort of have to take your guys' word for it, as I've not actually played a Monster Hunter game older than Generations Ultimate, but god damn, you covered this. I don't think I could have asked for a better explanation of the various reasons that someone would love Gogmazios as a final boss, as an important monster for the story. I feel like you really just, you nailed it, and I'm going to let your statement stand for exactly what it is. A perfect declaration of your love. I hope you two are very happy together.
Number 3 with 11.73% of the votes.
It's using tools! It's learning, Angela! It's learning! Run!
Ahtal-ka.
Artilka, no question. When there's an elder dragon level insect that plays puppeteer with goddamn Dragonators, and then one-ups itself by pulling out a freaking mech, I'm gonna ask, is there anything that can beat that?
Well, apparently there are precisely 2 things that can beat that, but you're right. Ahtal-ka is such an incredibly unique creature, from a structure like no other monster, especially being an elder dragon level insect, but then she whips out things like girders and Dragonators and water wheels to sit on her back and alter her shape, not to mention, well...
Artilka, best end boss. Nothing in Monster Hunter has left me more speechless than the first time I saw Artilka rise from the sand. Praise be unto our golden mech mantis.
Yeah, Adolnescent. What a moment that is. This is one of those just classic Capcom spectacle moments that they've become so good at, and the fact that everything in this fight is basically just made of gold makes it even better, even more gorgeous, and even more memorable. This is a truly fantastic experience.
Number 2 with 13.15% of the votes.
Carl, you're the light of my life.
Shagaru, Magala.
The showdown with Shagaru was personal, a grudge match between 2 rivals that have crossed each other again and again, growing stronger and stronger as time goes on until both have reached their peak of power. They size the other up, then clash in a battle that will go down in history. That's why I love the fight.
And here's another example of a game that I haven't played, and therefore I haven't personally experienced the story behind them, but I have heard so much about the whole Magala story through the 4th generation that I am aware enough of its impact on the community while not actually knowing the story itself. Visually though, aesthetically, this is one of the prettier fights Capcom has done. Just a truly masterful use of colors and contrast, and understanding how to evolve this creature from its base form to something just significantly more refined that looks oh so different from its original. Some would argue a potential polar opposite, yet you can still see a clear resemblance. It's very nice.
Shagaru Magala. I'm a for you player, so some bias, but my even then Shagaru has so much lore with the frenzy virus that they mix into the rest of the game super well. Its fight is cool, it looks cool, and it poses a challenge for a hunt that can be beaten if difficult.
And I do love that the end game of the game was essentially fully focused around their frenzy mechanic too. It really ties the monsters that you're still fighting in the end game into the universe. It makes it feel like, lore-wise, you're actually still fighting these monsters because they're still developing frenzy and you still need to get rid of them, as opposed to the New World investigations feeling more like relivable flashbacks that you get loot for.
Number 1 with 20.44% of the votes.
Now look into my eyes. Tighten up that sphincter.
Shara, Ishvalda.
Shara Ishvalda. It's one of the few final monsters that has an impact on the story and has one of the best first impressions. The fight is fun and the design is godly, both beautiful and horrifying. I hope we see it again in the future.
And I fully agree with all of this, especially the first impression part. But when I say first impression, I mean even the first impression. That first moment, that exact second, the game just shoves you in the arena, face to face with what could only be described as some sort of advanced magical rock golem. I don't think I've ever been as mystified by the Monster Hunter universe than I was in that exact moment. It looked like something that had absolutely no business in a Monster Hunter game. I was so damn confused, yet it looked so just absolutely amazing and imposing and just, wow. so memorable. But then the rocks come off, and just the underform is almost as impressive and far more beautiful at that, if we're honest. Everything about the way that he looks at least has me curious, if not in full-on awe of him. And that's before we even get to those last 2 points. His eyes.
For a final boss, I'd have to go with Shara. He's in my opinion the most memorable final boss due to his visual design and his fight mechanics as well. Also, those eyes will burn into you, and how can you forget those eyes?
They stare directly at you. Not your character either, but you as a human. Shara Ishvalda looks into the camera at all times once his eyes are open. It just creates this permanent subconscious discomfort that adds a whole other layer of intensity to this fight from a purely visible aspect. Not even something that you have to change the moveset for. This monster is just such a brilliant design as a whole. It's all one creature, and he greatly affected the story, and he is a truly, completely, unforgettably fantastic experience. And that just about does it for the top 5 itself, everyone. Which brings us right around to our weekly analysis of the experiment and voting as a whole. And my first note is, recency bias is real.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
Being that Monoblos of the first game is dead last, all the way in the back. No chance of even considering competing all by himself. It's so sad, but otherwise, this list is relatively close. Very pleasing on the eyes, it is a nice progression upwards, the only really big jumps being at the front runners, which is normal and expected, and then at number 8, where Sadeas sits. He is a pretty big jump down from Valstrax, who is ahead of him. Which brings me to my next point, Valstrax didn't make a top 5. Valstrax was eligible for the list and wound up 8th. This is unheard of. You guys, it's working. The format is working. That's what that tells me. You guys are actually voting based on what the topic is, not just based on what you like the most. You're doing it, guys. Good job. One more reminder, of course, to check the link in the description to vote on next week's list. As well, feel free to share it with any friends or anyone else that you think would enjoy taking part. The more people involved, the more accurate the results are. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been your list of the official top 5 final bosses in all of Monster Hunter. Do you agree with the majority on this one? Which of these lists would you like to see us do next? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the kingdom and Amelia. Rage, Content, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear. So if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons, even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.